The church was built in 1698 by the Swedes. They started the graveyards in 1638-39 when they first landed a block and a half from here. It is the oldest church in the country, still in use today in its original structure for its original intention. And the church also is a National Historic Landmark, the church and the burial grounds. The cemetery has been in use probably from the late 1638s, really in 1639. So it's been in use for 374 years. Approximately 12,000 people are buried here. They're layered from over the years, and that's what our records indicate. Our records start in 1699. This is the grave of Elizabeth Montgomery. She was born in the 1770s. She lived to 1863, and it was the book that she wrote, Reminiscences of Wilmington, that had the stories about the ghosts that they felt were in this graveyard. And one of them dealt with the ringing of the bell late at night and no one knowing who did it. This is the grave of Dr. Joseph Capel. He came over here during the Revolutionary War, and he was a doctor during that time period. He was in his 30s when he died, and on the day of his service, in the middle of his service, the skies darkened, the wind whipped up, and then crows flew in. People were very superstitious. They took it as a very bad omen, and they fled, leaving his casket sitting uncovered in the grave. These stones commemorate the Stalcup family. Johann Stalcup owned this land, and he donated it to the church in the 1690s as his tithe. There were a lot of Stalcups that came over. Johann was the first one. He lived until the 1690s, and he is buried here somewhere. Where, we're not sure. Over here, we have Ferdinand Baldet. Ferdinand married Victorine DuPont, E.I. DuPont's daughter. Ferdinand and Victorine were only married for about 2 months before he passed away. Victorine is buried in the family cemetery out at Hagley. She never remarried after his death. So it's very curious why Ferdinand is down here and Victorine is up with the family. This burial grounds is literally a history of the state of Delaware and the city of Wilmington for the individuals who are buried here. We hope that people learn a little bit about the history of Delaware and the city and the history of Wilmington and its earliest founding. This city is almost 375 years old. It will be next year when it was founded by the Swedes. Graveyards can be a wealth of information to the history of your own family or the towns and the states that you live in.
The Kalmar Nyckel is a recreation of the ship that brought Swedish settlers here to what is now Delaware in 1638. We recreated the ship in 1997, and we've been sailing ever since and doing a lot of educational programming, which is what we're going to be doing today.
On deck! On deck! Oh, that's better.
We have a pool of close to 300 folks. Today we have a lot of the folks that do education programs. So the educators are here in force because this is an education sail.
I got to wear some old-fashioned clothes from the Kalmar Nyckel. I saw the thing in the back. I forget what it's called, but it was really cool. And I also saw the captain's office.
So we talk a lot about what it would have been like to live on the ship, making an Atlantic crossing in 1638. Also, the kinds of technology that they had. So how did they navigate? How did they know how to find Delaware?
I had a lot of fun. We got to raise the triangle sail in the back.
Well, I learned that the Kalmar Nyckel came from Sweden all the way to Delaware. Well, I gotta wear a coat and a pair of mitts. And I also got to put down the big sail on the back.
I really do believe that the real reason for the existence of modern day tall ships should be education. We get kids from like the inner city who really like going out on a boat on a river is a huge deal for them. Very eye-opening experience.
We got to learn new pirate words. They didn't have electricity back then. I didn't know there was dogs on the ship.
They love the fact that it's real, that it really goes, and that they actually get to do things on board. They can learn something, experience something they've never done before. They get to set sail, they get to touch stuff and do things and try it.
And it was really fun.
Yeah, good job. Vincent, where are you going to put your hand?
We're talking about the maritime history of the Lewis area, and that of course would have to begin with the Indians who lived in the area beginning around 10,000 BC. The tribe that was here was a subgroup of the Lenni Lenape called the Sicanese, which was an Algonquin tribe. The first European contact in this area was with Henry Hudson in 1609. He claimed this territory for Holland, and he also wrote that our bay was very treacherous because of the shoals that are here, which led to the need for river pilots, which we still use here in the Delaware Bay and River. So the Dutch settled here, and in 1631, 28 men came from a town in Holland called Hoorn. One of the men who put up the money for this particular settlement was a David Peter de Vries, whose statue is upon our museum. Unfortunately for the original settlers, they got into a conflict with the natives who were here, and by the end of the first year they had been slaughtered.
The Queen Anne's Railroad Company was formed in 1894, and from the Queen Anne's Pier, the Queen Caroline steamer ship ferried passengers to Cape May, New Jersey for their excursions. The Queen Anne's Railroad, including the ferries, provided an increased trade and also passenger service between Baltimore and Lewis. It provided the Baltimore metropolitan area with produce and goods from the farms and orchard of Delaware. In 1936, there was a severe ice storm which destroyed over half of the pier. It was rebuilt partially and continued to provide entertainment until 1940, when it finally succumbed to another severe ice storm.